So good evening, everybody. My name is Rabbi Shmuel Levitin, and it is an honor for us to get together at such an auspicious occasion with such a beautiful crowd, with such an awesome speaker. This is going to be an evening to remember for a long time. We have an amazing program ahead for you.
In the land of Midian, the shepherd Moshe tended his flock. A single lamb strayed from the herd. Moshe followed it and found it drinking from a pool of water. I hadn't known you were thirsty. Your young legs must be tired.
Und hat sich dann noch gebracht, zurück in dem Eder, ein Stadlus Miuchodo, was sie gewähnt, Dafke der Fall, was sie gewähnt, Asep Zura. Wie sagt im Medisch, hat der Pharao der Rebischter gesagt, wenn geht zu Mesche, als Roi zu seiner Reis Roi.
Moshe led the people from Egypt and brought them the Torah. Each day, for 40 years, he tended to their every need. They stood in line to speak with him, and he counseled each one. When he finally brought them to the edge of the Promised Land, he was told that he would not be allowed to enter. Before he passed on, he asked God to choose the next leader. Appoint someone, he asked, who can relate to the unique needs of each of them. Through the ages and across the many exiles, God appointed leaders who were sensitive and compassionate. They would concern themselves with people's diverse needs, spiritual and material, profound and petty. By the 1600s, centuries of bitter exile had taken their toll on the Jewish diaspora. Their families murdered and their villages destroyed by pogroms. Thousands congregated in cities where there simply was not enough to go around. Impoverished and demoralized, they lacked even the most basic necessities. With their families and institutions destroyed, education became an unaffordable luxury. The scholars looked down on the uneducated masses, who became estranged from the Torah. A Torah scholar, Rabbi Yisroel Baal Shem Tov, began to mingle incognito among the common folk. He rallied a group of disciples to pay heed to their brethren in distress. Helping people find new ways to earn a livelihood, he restored their confidence and helped them put bread on their table. With stories and parables, he inspired them, explaining lofty Torah concepts in plain language. His caring revived a hidden spark within them. Empowered, the people awakened their connection to Torah and their Father in heaven. Hasidic Rebbes that would follow him would become known for their kindness and empathy.
Sie gewähren in Mieten Davnen und er ist getan, dem Talis nach weggegangen, bis 10 Uhr, wo dort sie gewähren nach Yildiz, wo Kolb näher bei ist, seien nach weggegangen in Davnen in die Schule, sie geblieben einer allein, und der fühlt, als sie damit dafür Reise helfen. Ist allein gegangen, ist getan, dem Talis allein gegangen, und getan, Kohle in Jonim, was mehr nicht wie Kuch Nefesh, das macht ihn, gedei zu Reise helfen, der Yildiz. Ich sei in seiner Wedes hat viel, B'yom HaKippurim, in Amokim Kodesh, hat der viel, als do b'ksei ha'yoro, a Yildes, was mit dafür helfen begashmet.
In the 20th century, the Jewish people were once again vulnerable and defenseless. After suffering unspeakable horrors, people were turned into numbers. A generation was left orphaned, yearning for warmth and affection. As their shattered remnants took refuge in America, a sensitive and reserved rabbi arrived who took the time to worry for their simplest problems.
You know, the Rebbe didn't know me, didn't know my mother, didn't know anyone from the Mishpacha. And when I looked at him, I saw tears. You know, it like as if he was my brother.
He said, well, you know how I feel. I believe that is your place and you should stay there. But I am looking at your wife's eyes and I see in them that she's rather unhappy where she is. And therefore, I will say, yes, go.
You know, the Rebbe asked for my husband. I explained that he wasn't at home then. And then the Rebbe said to me, "Nu, was macht das Kind? How is the baby? Is he eating now? Is it better?" And I said, yes.
And the last few words of the Rebbe were, Kach ani margish tza'ara. This is how I feel her pain.
A Jewish nation, more disparate than ever, flocked to his door, but he exhibited total devotion to each and every one of them. Where they had previously been hounded and banished, in his warmth they now felt loved and cared for. To each he gave his full attention, making it clear that no matter how simple and trivial, if it was important to them, it was, in fact, of great consequence. Here are a handful of their stories.
Wenn von Klau Yisroel, an der Klau Yisroel soll steigen herren. Und das meiste Nefesh gewinnt von jedem Yisroel, gewinnt an der steht zu jeder Iden, und geguckt, dass ein Jofo, und hat das Lammet Fuß gewinnt in alle Unionen.
We went with a group of maybe 10 Australians, and there were about 200 people there the first time we went. And the Rebbe spoke to us first, he gave a sikha, and after that, then it started, he went one by one. Wait your turn, speak to the Rebbe. I asked the Rebbe for a bracha for my brother, and my muzzle, I used the wrong wording.
I'd like to ask just one bracha for my brother, who has absolutely no shaykhs to Yiddishkeit at all. His name is Meir Ben Etta. Absolutely no shaykhs at all to Yiddishkeit.
He was born a Jew. That means he's not only shaykhs to Yiddishkeit, he is a Jew, yeah. And that is his essence. And you must only reveal it by removing the dirt or the shame that is covering it up. And that depends on his relatives, and especially brother or sister.
The Rebbe gave me a Pachem Ponim in a very nice way. I realized that encapsulated the entire philosophy of Chabad in a nutshell, in one sentence, where when you look at another Yid, the fact that they're born Jewish, that's all that counts.
Das noch nicht maßbig die Schnee-Unionen von der Steh, mit Mabit Mayin Teva, und mir mont noch als leer sein der Ingen von Melamed zu sein, al kol echet wie echet mit Israel. Und mis Masbira, das geht zusammen mit Smeser Nefesh sein auf Klal Israel.
was Lichieri, was dort es für a Scheich ist die Schnee in Jonne. Wie Jader aber Lichieri, das gar in Jonne im Hof kam, wird man das echt verstehen von Drosches am Meder. Der Meder sagt auf Morzche. Früher sagt als hat gegangen, Lodas, schlimm Mester und Mai Yosebo. Sagt auf der Ruf in Medrisch, hat der Rebischter hat gesagt, wie bald als gegangen, der ist Stev sein, Liochid, war Nefesh Achas, wird zu Seche sein, Tiske, und wird der ist Stev sein, Liklol Yisroi. Shnema der ist Stev Liyamen.
1972, Shnas Hashivik, 70th year of the Rebbe. However, we brought President Nixon's letter to the Rebbe for the Rebbe's birthday. Called the Rebbe the most optimistic Jew of our time. He said that Rebbe told him that everybody's down on American Jewry, you know, because of the levels of observance and what have you in American Jewry. You know. And then he said this quote that I'll never forget that quote. The Rebbe said the American Jewish community is a very good community. You can't tell them to do anything, but you can teach them to do everything.
Good evening to you all, and welcome to the 7th annual community-wide Jewish Unity event, One People, One Heart. An evening to celebrate the teachings and impact of the Lubavitcher Rebbe of righteous memory. My name is Shana Matasaf, and it is my honor and privilege to serve as Master of Ceremonies tonight. Tonight we honor the Rebbe. It is my greatest privilege that as of summer of 2022, my husband and I received the role of the Rebbe's emissaries to the Central Cascades together with Rabbi Barry and Nechama Farkash. We strive together to bring the Rebbe's vision of Judaism and godliness to our surroundings through services, kids programs, classes, and summer camp. Many of our counselors are actually here tonight. As we all know, the Jewish world is now going through a very challenging period. Sadly, there are still many hostages that are being held in captivity, and the Jewish people in the Holy Land are literally fighting for their survival. Tonight, we will have a short prayer of service where we will beseech God for the immediate release of the hostages and for the safety and security of the Jewish people in the land of Israel and throughout the world. It is now a distinct honor for me to introduce to you our Regional Director, Rabbi Shalom Ber Levitin. Rabbi Levitin, along with his dear wife, Rebbe Zanchani, were sent by the Rebbe over 50 years ago in 1972 to open Chabad of the Pacific Northwest. Since then, Chabad has grown and flourished to levels unimaginable, with dozens of institutions spanning across 5 states and 2 provinces. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Rabbi Levitin, who will lead us in saying Psalm 123, the Rebbe's Psalm.
First, welcome everybody for coming. I want to give Yashikeh to Rabbi and Rebbetzin Shmuli and Chaya Levitin, happened to be my son and son-in-law, for putting together a beautiful program. I want to welcome Rabbi Brisky His father was my Rebbe many years ago. Rabbi, thank you for coming. Special shout out to my Rebbetzin who's here with us, and all the shluchim and shluchas from the state of Washington and beyond who are with us. I'm just going to say one word before I say the Rebbe's kapitel. The Gemara says in Tainis Daf Hey, Yaakov Avinu lo yimes, ma'azar b'chaim afu b'chaim, that Yaakov Avinu did not really die. The Gemara says we know that he was involved in all that he was. So the Mishnah Gemara says, Zare b'chaim afu b'chaim, his children are alive, means that he's alive. And the shluchim and the shluchis, literally into the thousands all over the world, represent the Zare b'chaim, that the Rebbe lives with us through the shluchim and the shluchis, who have dedicated their lives to strengthening Yiddishkeit, Ba'al Pinas Haaretz, throughout the world, among the Jewish community and beyond, into the whole world itself, the 7 Noachide laws, which the Rebbe so emphatically championed. So tonight, we rededicate ourselves to the Rebbe's mission, the Rebbe's goal, and the ultimate goal is to bring Mashiach Tzidkenu, which will redeem the world, where there'll be no more wars, no more people who are in captivity. Our young men and women who are fighting will be home, and we merit the rebuilding of the third temple in Jerusalem, which will be the third temple. Kapitel Kuf Chav Gimel, I'll say it in Hebrew and in English. Shir Amaleis, the Rebbe's Kapitel.
It's on the screen, you can read it together.
1 second. Shir Hamaleis, Elecha Nasosi, Eseinai Hayoshiv Hashemayim, a song of ascents to you who have I lifted my eyes, you who are enthroned in heaven. Hine chena avadim al yad Adonai, kene shivcha al yad givita, kene neinu el Adonai Eloheinu ad sheyachanenu. Indeed, as the eyes of servants are turned to the hand of the masters, and the eyes of a maid to the hand of a mistress, so are our eyes turned to the Lord our God until He will be gracious to us. Chanenu Adonai Chanenu Kirav Savanu Vuz. Be gracious to us, Lord. Be gracious to us, for we have surfeited with humiliation. Rabba Sovalon Avseno Laga Shananim Habut Yeyenim. Our soul has been overfilled with the derision of the complacent, with the scorn of the arrogant. Again, may we merit the ultimate redemption, speed in our time. Thank you. Thank you for.
I would now like to introduce Uri Chodson. Uri Chodson is a Seattle community member who served in the IDF. He helps run Seattle CSS Chapter, a non-profit organization that trains community members on how to protect Jewish lives and the Jewish way of life. Trainees of the program are currently in the middle of an 8-week intensive program where they learn hands-on skills on how to prevent attacks on our community. Uri will be leading us in a prayer to honor those who are serving and ask for their protection, as well as for the protection of Jewish people throughout the world. Please join me in welcoming Uri Chodson to lead us in a prayer for Israel, our land, our hostages, and the whole entire nation.
For the conductor, a song of David. May the Lord answer you on the day of distress. May the name of God of Jacob fortify you. May he send you your aid from his sanctuary, and may he support you from Zion. May he remember all your meal offerings, and may he accept your fat, burnt offerings forever. May he give you as your heart desires, and may he fulfill all your counsel. Let us sing praises for your salvation. Let us assemble in the name of our God. May the Lord fulfill all your requests. Now I know that the Lord saved his anointed. He answered him from his holy heavens. with the mighty acts of salvation from his right hand. These trust in chariots and these in horses, but we mention the name of the Lord our God. They kneel and fall, but we rise again, strength. O Lord, save us. May the King answer us on the day we call.
Tonight, we are delighted to present a collection of beautiful Chabad melodies arranged for classical piano by Yisrael Edelson. These pieces will be performed by internationally acclaimed Steinway artist Judith Cohen. Judith, who began her piano studies at age 5 and continued her training at the Chicago Musical College, became a Steinway artist in 2005, joining an elite society of pianists. Together, tonight, we will hear 4 special nigunim that the Rebbe taught us. The first one, Nigun Arba Bavot. After the Tanya was published in 1796, Hasidim struggled to understand it. The Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, founder of Chabad, explained that understanding the Tanya required its accompanying music. He then began teaching his melodies, with the most exemplary being the Arba Bavot, which means the 4 portals. This melody, originally composed by the Alter Rebbe, was later explained by the 5th Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Shalom Deiber Schneerson, as embodying the Chabad ideal of deep introspection and practical order. The 4 stanzas correspond to the 4 spiritual worlds, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asilut. The second nigun is Kianu Amecha, which means, for we are your nation and you are our God. The following melody to these words, taken from the High Holidays, was the first taught by the Rebbe on Simchas Torah in the year 5717, 1956. It is often sung throughout the Yom Kippur prayers with immense emotion and meditation. Let us dive into the sea of Hasidic melody and together tap into our soul's most deepest form of expression. Ladies and gentlemen, the Holy Nigunim, please enjoy. What a heart-stirring experience. Thank you for sharing your gift with us. We look forward to hearing more soon. Rabbi Moshe Brisky is the Executive Director and Spiritual Leader of Chabad of the Conejo in Agoura Hills, California. He is a gifted teacher and the founder of the Conejo Jewish Academy, as an adult Jewish education institution that attracts thousands of students each year to its many offerings. He is a much sought-after speaker and has lectured throughout the world. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, Rabbi Brisky.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for coming out tonight. You may have heard that they've been opening up Chabad centers in some very remote places throughout the world. In states like Wyoming or Montana, not that many Jews there, but there's a Chabad center. So one Shabbos, a Jewish cowboy showed up, and upon arriving, he realized that he and the rabbi were the only ones present. So the rabbi asks the cowboy, "Do you want me to go ahead with the sermon?" The cowboy says, "Look, I'm not a very smart or learned fellow, but I can tell you this. If I went to feed my cattle and only one showed up, I would feed it." Makes sense? So the rabbi found that very compelling, so he gets up to deliver his sermon. 15 minutes pass, a half hour passes, 1 hour passes, 2 hour passes. He's on 3 hours when he finally finishes. And he comes down to the cowboy and he says, "Nu, how did you like it?" To which he said, "I'm not a very smart or learned fellow, but if I went to feed my cattle and only one showed up, I wouldn't feed it all the hay." I say that because I have been known to feed a lot of hay. So I invite those that are standing to find a seat because you're going to need it. You know, historians like to look, when they study history, they look for pivotal moments in time. And there are volumes and volumes of details that can define each and every decade. There are thousands of volumes of details that can define a century. But that there are those particular events that can be pointed to and shown that moment, that one moment changed the direction of the country or changed the direction of the entire world. You can call it the spark that ignited the flame that illuminated the world. And history moves both in the negative and in the positive by those trigger moments, particular moments that one could point to and say, nothing was the same after that moment. For us as Jews, we can look at some of those pivotal moments of history. When God comes to Abraham and says, "Lech lecha," leave your place. That changed everything. Nothing was the same after that one verse. Everything is different. The entire world is different. Joseph becoming viceroy over all of Egypt, eventually leaving for the rest of the family, moving to Egypt and setting the stage for the exile and the Exodus. A pivotal moment in Jewish history. And you can give this assignment to any Hebrew school class, to any student. What would you define as a pivotal moment that affected the rest of history? People would point to the burning bush. People will point to the revelation at Sinai, entering the promised land, building the temple. We can go on and on and on. I say with confidence that the date of the 28th of Sivan, which on the Jewish calendar is this Thursday, which corresponded to June 22, 1941, 84 years ago. It was the day of the arrival of the Lubavitcher Rebbe to the shores of the United States of America. Will be looked at by historians as one of the key moments of Jewish history, not just in regards to the 20th century and the 21st century, but of all of Jewish history. Let's back up 1 year prior to that date. The previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, arrives in the United States in 1940. At first, he resided in a hotel in Manhattan called the Greystone Hotel. Between the torture and the persecution that he suffered at the hands of the Russians and what the Nazis put him and his family through, physically, he was a broken man, confined to a wheelchair. But spiritually, he was a powerful force of energy and determination. From the moment of his arrival, he began organizing yeshivas and shuls and mikvahs and publishing houses, and he built this dynamic infrastructure for Torah Judaism in the free world. Now, many of the leaders of American Jewish establishment of that time came to meet with him when he was at the Greystone Hotel. And one after another, they counseled, they said, Rebbe, this is America. It's not Europe. You're here now. You're safe. You have your small group of followers. Find a nice home. Open a nice little shtibel. Get some good medical attention. And do what most Americans do. They write their memoirs. You could relax now. Write your story. Things are different here than they are in the old country. What you're trying to do here will not fly. The culture of America won't buy into this. American Jews don't want this, so let it go. But the Rebbe put everyone on notice with the famous words of America's nit anders, America will not be different. It's going to happen here. The torch of Judaism, the torch of Jewish learning, the torch of Jewish living was not extinguished by the Bolsheviks, and it was not extinguished by the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, and it will certainly not be extinguished by an American culture of unawareness and assimilation. Make no mistake about it, we will carry the torch forward. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, defied the conventional wisdom. And of course, those schools were built, and those Torah centers were open. When the Rebbe of our generation assumed the leadership of Chabad, that torch began to shine with ever greater radiance and intensity. In those early years, the Rebbe would often share a story about the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement who lived in the 1700s. So let me tell you the story of the Baal Shem Tov that the Rebbe would often tell in the 1950s. It was a cold and rainy night. The disciples of the Baal Shem Tov were sitting in the study hall. They were engrossed in their lofty mystical studies. When suddenly the door burst open and in came running this peasant, a wagon driver. The man was obviously very upset and in a deep state of panic. "Help," he cried out. "The wheels of my wagon are stuck in the mud, and my horse is on its last legs." There wasn't paved streets, it was muddy streets, it had rain, the wagon wheels got stuck in the mud, the horse couldn't get out, the horse kept on trying and couldn't break through. He's trying to push the wagon himself, but he knows he needs help. But it's a cold, rainy night, there's no one around, but he sees a light on in one of the houses on the street. So he goes there and he sees there's a whole group of people, perfect. He has people that can help. And so this peasant with mud all over is coming into a room where the Baal Shem Tov is teaching lofty mystical studies. So they immediately turn to him and, "Shh, quiet, stop making noise." And he starts explaining his horse, his wagon, he needs help. And they brush him off and they say, "Quiet, get out. And he leaves. And he goes back to his horse and buggy again, and he continues to try, but to no avail. And he realizes if his horse continues like this, the horse is going to die. And that's his livelihood. So he has no choice. He has to go back into the room with the strange-looking people and beg for some help. The desperate man comes back into the room, and again he's making noise, and again they're trying to quiet him down. And finally they say, "We can't help you." To which the peasant yells out in Russian, and my Russian is not that good, "Moshish, Danya Choshish." Can. The question is, do you want to? You keep saying you can't help me. That's not true. You can help me. You just don't want to. At that very moment, the Baal Shem Tov stopped his teachings. And the Baal Shem Tov said, the line you just heard from that wagon driver is more important than anything I can teach you tonight. Always remember, can you can. The question is, do you want to? The story was told by the Lubavitcher Rebbe on countless occasions, especially in the 1950s. This was the first years of the Rebbe's leadership of the Chabad movement, and at that time, the unspeakable pain of the Holocaust was all too fresh in the hearts and the minds of world Jewry. And the after effects of the physical nightmare led to spiritual disillusionment, causing so many of our people to drift away from their sacred heritage. At every opportunity, during every gathering, the Rebbe would exhort his followers, we must reignite the sparks within the souls of our brethren. We must go throughout the world and rekindle the flame of Judaism. We must reach out to every Jew with love and with acceptance and inspire them with acts of goodness and with the sanctity of the Torah. We must strengthen the faith. We must build schools and synagogues and Chabad centers in every nook and cranny, corner and crevice of the entire globe, wherever Jews may find themselves. At first, Hasidim looked at the Rebbe like, what are you talking about? We're a bunch of orphans. We're a bunch of survivors. Go out in the world, inspire our world. We're a broken orphan community. Who are we? What are we? How could we attempt such ambitious and unrealistic endeavors? If we'll be able to maintain our own family's sense of Jewish identity and commitment, that would be a miracle. But to go out there into the dark and apathetic world and try to influence and inspire a Jewish world, it's impossible. We can't. We simply can't. But the Rebbe wouldn't hear of it. In a voice reverberating with passion and with urgency, he would quote the frustrated wagon driver of that story I shared with you. Moshish, Danya Choshish. Can, you can. The question is, do you want to? That's the challenge he put before his Hasidim. Don't tell me you can't. You can. Do you want to? The Rebbe was from the most persistent of men. And in the days and the months and years to follow, he would take his Hasidim by the hand and he would encourage them and he would assure them, you can and therefore you must. The Rebbe called upon his Hasidim to share his vision for a brighter future for all, to seize the moment. He looked us straight in the eye and he said, you can make a difference. You can impact the community. You can change the world. Yes, you, children, teenagers, young couples in your 20s, stand tall, strengthen yourself. Ufarasta, spread out. America and South America and Argentina and in Israel and Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Africa, Australia, Asia, North America, go. East Coast or West Coast, go. Emboldened by this inspiration, first tens, and then hundreds, and then thousands of emissaries went forth onto every continent. And Chabad evolved into a vital worldwide network of schools and Chabad houses and outreach centers spanning the globe. And then the Rebbe's bold vision, his boundless love, and his relentless leadership rekindled the spirit of this post-Holocaust generation. Because he truly believed, you can do it. You saw on the video moments ago, the famous Farbrengen that took place in 1972. You saw with Herman Walk speaking to the Rebbe and saying L'chaim to the Rebbe. That was a momentous Farbrengen. The Rebbe was celebrating his 70th birthday. Now, right before, months leading up to that particular gathering, there were some very well-meaning disciples who suggested that now that the Rebbe was getting up there in years, perhaps it was time to slow down a bit. Cut some hours off that schedule, get some more rest. Stop putting in, crazy hours each day. You got to focus on your health. They should have known better. As a matter of fact, in honor of the Rebbe's 70th birthday, the Rebbe did something he rarely ever did. He requested a birthday gift. He said, I'm getting so many letters asking what I would like for my birthday. Obviously, the Rebbe didn't want a cake. He didn't want a new car. The Rebbe said, if you really want to know what I would like for my birthday, in honor of my 70th birthday, I would like 71 new Chabad centers. Now, today you may think that that's not a big number, but back in 1972, it was huge. How are we going to open up 71 Chabad centers in a matter of months? How can it be done? And on the eve at that particular Farbrengen, the Rebbe was handed a list of over 71 new centers that will be opened during the course of that year. Now, the Rebbe was very happy that night. At that same gathering, there were a group of donors from California, and they approached the Rebbe just like Herman Wouk did during the talks. There was always that time of singing, and they presented the Rebbe with a key to one of the new Chabad houses. The Rebbe said to them, I want you to know that one day this is going to become a pattern. It will be like a chain store. Very soon, there'll be chain stores, there'll be Chabad centers all over the world. And they smiled, and they thought it was cute, and they said, Amen, yes, so may it be. In the decades to follow, the Rebbe would continue to launch initiative after initiative and campaign after campaign and project after project with the underlying message: we must carry the torch forward. We must educate more children. We must reach out to more families, touch more lives, wherever they may be and whoever they may be. As to the Rebbe's prediction at his 70th birthday, chain stores. So I did some research today using Google. The most recognized name of a department store in the United States is Macy's. There are 783 Macy's department stores in the world today. There are over 4,000 Chabad centers manned by 5,000 shluchim and shluchos in over 100 countries and in all 50 states. Today, there is hardly a city, a town, or a village where Jews reside on the face of the earth where Chabad doesn't yet have a presence. The Rebbe's inspiration and his mandate continues to echo all throughout the global expanse. As my dear friend Rabbi Telushkin, who wrote a wonderful book called Rebbe, writes, we are bearing witness to the greatest renaissance of Jewish life in history. Not in the past century, he writes, but in our entire history. So how did he do it? How was this accomplished? Who am I to say? There's so many books that have been published to try to analyze what was the Rebbe's strategy, what was his game plan, what was his philosophy, what was his marketing program. Now, I'm neither a scholar or a historian or a philosopher, but I'd like to focus tonight on one aspect of the Rebbe's approach. And perhaps I'll best be able to express myself with a series of stories. The story is told about one of the great shluchim of the prior generation. His name is Rabbi Chaim HaKohen Gutnick, Olav Hashem. Rabbi Gutnick was a very prominent and prestigious rabbi in Australia. He was the president of the Rabbinical Council of Victoria. He was chaplain of the Australian Defence Force. He was a very dynamic and eloquent speaker. When he spoke, he would paint a picture that everyone would be inspired and be connected to. He would capture his audience. He would move his audience to tears. He was known as a great orator. So the story goes, he was in New York one time, he had an audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Rebbe asks him to offer a lecture when he goes back on the topic of mikveh, a family period. Goes back decades ago. Today, mikveh is often talked about. There's plenty lectures on it. There's brochures. It's very popular. But decades ago, it wasn't. It wasn't spoken about. It was private classes that a Rebbitzin would give to women in the community. And here the Rebbe is saying to this great orator, I want you to give a public lecture on the subject of mikveh. The Rebbe asks you to do something, you're going to do it. And you're going to do it well. So the first thing he does is he gets a beautiful flyer design. He books a hotel ballroom. He starts publicizing, advertising, sends out mailings. He has to make sure if the Rebbe asked him to do a lecture, it's going to be nice, it's going to be a big crowd. Then he starts working on the lecture. It's not a subject he's talked about publicly before, so he really has to put a lot of time and thought to the sensitivities of the subject, how best to explain it. He puts a lot of time and a lot of effort. And the evening comes, and he shows up. And he experiences what we would, in the rabbinic world would call a rabbi's worst nightmare. Let me tell you what a rabbi's worst nightmare is like. It's not when no one shows up. Because when no one shows up, no one knows that no one showed up. He came into this ballroom and there is one woman sitting there. That's a rabbi's worst nightmare. You ever try giving a lecture with one person in the room? Like our cowboy tried? And the woman came to hear the talk, and the podium is there, the microphone is there, and he gets up and he puts it all into it. He gives the lecture. The evening was over. He went home, quite down, quite depressed. Not so much waste of money, waste of time, waste of effort. He let the Rebbe down. This is something the Rebbe wanted from him, and he didn't deliver. So he writes a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, apologizing. I know you wanted this, and it didn't work. And the Rebbe's response was very short. The Rebbe's response was, how many mothers did Moses have? The obvious answer is one woman gave birth to Moses. And the history of the entire world has changed because of one woman. You write to me that you are apologizing to me? How do you know what you accomplished last night? How do you know what's going to be with this one woman that was there? How do you know how much you inspired her? How do you know what's going to be with the rest of her life? How do you have any idea what will be with her? You don't know. Maybe she will have been inspired to go to the mikveh. Maybe she'll give birth to children from that mitzvah. Maybe those children will grow up to change the entire world. One person equals the world to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And that was what the Rebbe taught us. One. The power of one. It's nice to have a room packed with people. We all enjoy it. We all appreciate it. But one person equals an entire world as well. Those involved in the Rebbe's work will always keep this perspective because that's the essence of it. As Isaiah prophesies concerning the era of Mashiach, Isaiah wanted us to know what it's going to be like when we get close to the coming of the Messiah. And he said, V'atem tuluktu echad echad. You will gather the Jewish people one by one by one. For the Rebbe, this wasn't some lofty poetic idea. It wasn't a catchphrase. It was and it is a very real philosophy that has very practical implications. This is our mantra. This is the Rebbe's mission statement. One Jew at a time. One mitzvah at a time. It was this Baal Teshuva, a returning to Judaism from a distant city that once came to the Rebbe. He came by dollars and he said to the Rebbe that I want to thank you. You sent an emissary to bring Judaism and assistance, and he used these words, to this little Jew in a tiny, insignificant community. As the fellow in the video said when he talked about his brother who has no connection to Judaism, the Rebbe responded similar. There is no such thing as a little Jew, and there's no such thing as an insignificant community. To the Rebbe, every part of the world, bar none, is of monumental significance, and every Jew looms huge in God's master plan of creation. When the Rebbe looked at a person, he saw beyond the superficial appearances. He saw beyond the imperfections. He saw the potential within. And he deputized all of his Hasidim, all of his followers, all of his students to do the same, to appreciate the soul and the neshama, the holiness of each and every single Jew on the face of the earth. I remember my first Rosh Hashanah I spent in the Canal Valley. It's 40 years ago. And after services on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, I explained to this congregation this mitzvah of Tashlach. You're familiar, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we go to a body of water and we symbolically cast away our sins. Well, the city I was in was a city called Westlake Village. Westlake Village must have a lake, otherwise it wouldn't have the word lake in its name. So I tell the congregation that those that would like to join me after services will walk together to the Westlake Lake and we'll cast away our sins. A nice little group, maybe 10 people decided to stay. And we start walking toward the direction of the lake. As we're going to the lake, I still remember the fellow's name 40 years ago. His name was Gary Katzman. Gary says to me, Moshe, I know a shortcut to the lake. If we cut through a condominium parking lot and we go down a path, we get to the lake a few minutes shorter time. Okay, I don't know the area too well. Gary must know it better. I'll follow you, Gary. And we cut through some condominium. We're going through this parking lot that never was shorter, but that doesn't matter. As we're walking in the parking lot, I see this elderly woman in a walker, and she's walking towards us. And as she sees us, she says, Shana Tova. That was a signal she was Jewish. And then she starts crying. That's odd. Why is she crying? And then she explains to me that she had surgery just a few days earlier on her leg. And this is the first time in her life that she could remember not being in shul on Rosh Hashanah. And that's why she was gone. I'm this 20-year-old rookie rabbi. So you think about the right lines. God will bless you. That next year you will be restored to your health. And next year you'll be able to be in shul on Rosh Hashanah. Whatever line you can think of. I blessed her. We went on our way. She went on her way. We went to the water. Gary finally found his way to the lake. I'm standing there by Tashlach, and it hits me like a ton of bricks. I messed up so bad. This is the thought I had. God is very busy on Rosh Hashanah. There's a lot going on in the world. There's Jews everywhere coming out, going to the synagogues. There's cantors everywhere singing away. Shofars are blowing everywhere. There's a lot going on. And he's busy recording everything, writing what's going to go on for the whole year. He's got a lot going on. Then he hears a woman crying in a city called Westlake Village, California. And she's crying because she couldn't be in shul that day. And God tells all the angels, shh, quiet, quiet, quiet. Because he's listening to this one woman in Westlake Village, California. And God inspires her in his response to her to find the strength, get out of bed, and take a few steps outside. Use a walker, just take a few steps, get outside. And I'm going to arrange for the rookie rabbi to be walking by at that exact moment, because I'm going to send Nudnik Gary Katzman to him. And Nudnik Gary is going to tell the rookie rabbi, go follow me, because I know a shortcut. And he's going to take him a blundgered away, but he's going to pass this parking lot exactly when you will be taking your few steps. And because the rookie rabbi is a chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, certainly he will have a shofar with him, and he will blow shofar for the woman who's in pain because she wasn't in shul that day. That's the thought that came over me as I'm standing in front of the Westlake Lake with my group of 10 people, realizing I didn't take a shofar with me, and I didn't blow shofar for this woman. And this whole encounter that God set up, I messed up. And it bothered me, it really bothered me. On the way back, I asked Gary to take us through the same strange way you took us, trying to find the woman. There was no one out there. No one knew who I was talking about. She never walked with a walker before. I didn't even know her name. I went home that night quite sad. I got up the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and I told over to this congregation the story and how bad I felt. And I said, I'm going to make a very strange request. I can't carry on like this as a rabbi in this community unless I find this woman today and blow shofar for her on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Do I have any takers who want to help me? They thought, where did they send this guy from? A few guys decided they'll help me. Maybe they felt terrible for me. And we went back to this parking lot. No one there. Let's start knocking on doors. I start knocking on doors. If you know an elderly woman that walks with a walker, they don't know what I'm talking about. Do you know an elderly woman that had surgery in her leg a few days ago? No one knows what I'm talking about. I keep going house to house to house. There's a few hundred condominiums there, but I'm determined. I was crazy back then. And finally I get to a house. I knock on the door. Elderly man answers the door, takes one look at me, and closes the door right away. That's usually a good sign. So I say, I'm not selling anything. I just want to know, does your wife walk with a walker because she had surgery a few days ago? And he says, yes. Get away from the door. I say, but I got to tell you a story. Keep the door closed. And I explained yesterday she was out. First day Rosh Hashanah, God. I try to explain it all to her. Get away from the door. You're trespassing. I just want to blow shofar for her. It's really important. If you don't go away, I will call the police. I said, God, you really don't want to forgive me here. You really don't want to help me out. I'm trying. I know I messed up, but I'm trying. Give me a break. I found the house. Now the guy's going to call the police. What am I supposed to do? So I start slowly walking away. There's a porch around, a patio around this house that has these slats of wood. So the person sitting behind the patio can actually see out. I can't see in, but they can see out. That's the way the wood is all. And I hear the woman saying, is that you from yesterday? Yes, it's me. I found you, and I tell her through the slats of wood the whole story. And she says, so come on in and blow shofar for me. I said, it's a problem. The guy at the door won't let me in. I ignore him. That's my husband. I said, but he really sounds angry. Just come on in. So I go back to the door. I come in. He's really now huffing and puffing. He runs into his bedroom and closes the door there. I go out to the patio, and I just say, what's with him? Why is he so angry? And she explains to me that our son became Orthodox. And ever since he became Orthodox, he stopped having dinner with us. He would come out once a week and he would have dinner with us, but he stopped because we're not kosher and he is kosher. And my husband is very hurt, and so when he saw a religious Jew at the door, he let it out on you. So I said, after the holiday, I'll call your son and I'll explain. He can have a separate kosher microwave. He can bring in takeout food. We can find a way to make this work, but a son should visit his parents once a week. We'll make it work. So I'm about to blow shofar for her, and I say, but let me ask you a question. I know you told me you weren't in synagogue this year. Was your husband in synagogue? She said, no, because I didn't go, he didn't go. So he didn't hear shofar yesterday or today either. No, he didn't. Well, if I'm going to blow shofar for you, should we not invite him to join? And she says, go knock on the door. So I knock on the bedroom door. And I say, your wife told me everything that happened with your son, and I'm going to work and I'm going to take care of it, but I'm here to blow shofar. You are in a shul today. You might as well come out and hear shofar as well. And he opens the door and he comes out. Comes out to the back patio. I'm about to blow shofar, and he says, wait. You can't blow shofar without me wearing a yarmulke on my head. And he runs to get a yarmulke. As I'm about to blow the shofar now, he says, wait. My brother lives close by, and he didn't hear shofar today as well. I'll go call him on the phone and tell him to come on over. Here comes the dilemma. You can't use the phone in Rosh Hashanah. I don't want him to use the phone in order for him to call because I'm here. So I say, not such a good idea. He says, okay, you don't want me to use the phone, I get it. I'll go in my car and I'll drive and I'll pick him up. It's not going to work. I said, give me his address. Tell me how to get there. Don't send Gary Katzman to show me how to get there. And I'll go after here. I'll go to his house and blow shofar. He says, I have a better idea. I'll go walk with you now. We'll bring him and his family over here, and together both families will hit the shofar. And that's what happened right there. We had both families together, and it taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Never give up on a single Jew. Never think because a Jew says, I'm not interested, that they're really not interested. There's always something behind there, but there is a holiness within a Jew that's always there. It's just a matter of finding it. That tradition of stopping by this house continued for 15 more years. Every year at Tashlach, they would invite all their friends over to their house. It was the shofar blowing party that would take place in this condominium section. A mitzvah that continued to go and go and go. We have to remember this. Every single Jew matters. Every single one. I have a friend in Utah, Rabbi Benny Zippel, who's a close friend of mine. And he has a Chabad house in Utah. Most people think that Utah is just for Mormons. There are Jews there as well. But a few hundred miles from Salt Lake City, there are many institutions in Utah for troubled teens. When I was growing up, they would call it reform schools. Really what they are is they're rehab centers for teens. So if a teen gets in trouble with the law, you don't want to send a teenager to a prison. Not a good place for a teen. So they have these institutions where you can send your teenager to this rehabilitation center. They'll stay there, whether it's 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, a year, whatever amount the sentence may be. They'll do their time in this particular place, and hopefully when they come out, they're better members of society for it. Rabbi Zippel visits these teen rehab centers. There are many, unfortunately, Jewish teenagers in these centers, and he travels on Sundays hundreds of miles to visit with these Jewish teenagers. One day, he gets a call from a woman who tells Rabbi Zippel that her daughter was in one of these institutions, and she ran away. And the police picked her up. Now, if you run away and the police pick you up, you lose that option. You're going to prison. And the mother is begging Rabbi Zippel, are you the rabbi that she says visits? If you're the rabbi, do you know the director of the program? And if you do, can you help me? Save my daughter. Have the director tell the chief of police that they'll take her back. Rabbi Zippel says, I am the rabbi that visits, and I do know the director of that program, and I'm willing to get involved. But something like this is going to cost. And she says, okay, I'm desperate, name the price. And he said, no, you don't understand. When the Chabad rabbi says to you, it's going to cost, we're not talking dollars. Well, what are you talking about? I'm talking about a mitzvah. What is that? It means a mitzvah, a good deed, a tradition. Take something upon yourself. It happens to be Friday today. So I'm going to ask you to take upon yourself to light the Shabbat candle. You light this every Friday. When you light it, you think about the blessings you want for your daughter. Sunday will come in 2 days. I will drive down there myself. I will get involved. I'll get your daughter out of jail. I'll get her back in the program. You light the candle. She says, but I'm reformed. He says, what has that got to do with it? Well, we don't do those things. Where is it written in the Bible that Shabbat is only for Orthodox Jews? She says, let me think about it. He says, think about it. You were about to write me a check for any amount I would have sent to you. I'm asking for a mitzvah instead. She says, okay, send me the kit and the instruction booklet in the mail. And I'll do it when I get the instruction booklet. He says, you don't need an instruction booklet. But let me try this. If I can get someone to bring you a candle and the instruction booklet today, will you light the candle today? Up until this point, Rabbi Tzipel never asked the woman, where do you live? He just took it for granted. Wherever she lives, there's got to be a Chabad center somewhere close by. She says, deal. He says, okay, what city do you live in? She says, Calabasas, California. If you go on Chabad.org, there's this little find center in the top right corner. You can type in any city. It will tell you the closest Chabad center. So as she's saying the words, what city, he's already typing it in. At that point, the point of the story, which took place 25 years ago, there was no Chabad in Calabasas, which there is right now. The closest one was Agoura Hills. And my name pops up on his screen. And he knows Moshe well. So he says to her, okay, hold on a second. He calls me. He says, Moshe, how far is Calabasas? I said, it's 2 exits. He says, if I gave you an address to go to today, could you bring a candle and show her how to make the blessings? I said, of course. He puts me on hold. He gets back to her. And he says, okay, it's done. Someone will be calling you soon. Let me get your cell number. Someone will be calling you to arrange to bring a candle. But you're in Utah. No, don't worry, I'll take care of it. He hangs up with her after getting all the information, the daughter's information, all the information he needs. A second later, I'm calling her. She says, hello. I said, I'm your Candleman delivery boy. She's freaking out on the phone. I don't understand. I just spoke to a guy in Salt Lake City, Utah. I said, yeah, I live closer here. I said, just give me your address and I'll come by right now. She says, but I'm not home. I said, where are you right now? She says, I'm in a city nearby. I said, what's the name of the city? She says, it's called Agoura Hills, California. Okay, where in Agoura Hills, California are you? She says, I'm actually talking on my phone from a gas station. I said, where is the gas station? She says, it's on a street called Kentwood and Reyes Adobe. I said, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to finish filling up your car with gas. I want to make sure to put the cap back on so you don't drive away with the thing attached to it. I want you to come out of the gas station and make a right turn. I will be the person standing there at 100 feet from where you are right now. The entire time that she's on the phone with Rabbi Tzipel in Salt Lake City, Utah, she's on the block of the Chabad house, on the corner of the Chabad house. That's where this conversation is going by. And in a few minutes, she's standing there, she's shaking. And she gets a candle and the candle magnet and the lighting times and the blessings and everything. And she starts crying and she says, I now know that there's a God, that God is watching over me, that God's going to take care of my daughter. I've told this story over 25 years. I've told it many times. But I want to share with you that I met her recently. Her daughter is a therapist right now. She's doing quite well. And she has not missed lighting a candle every single Friday night. We don't give up on a single Jew. A couple of years ago at a JLI retreat, this one took place in Virginia. I was one of the guest speakers along with Mrs. Miriam Swerdlove was one of the speakers that year. Sometimes you're lined up at the same time when someone else is speaking, so you can't really hear them. But this particular time, I gave one talk in 1 hour, and Miriam Swerdlove gave another talk in a different hour, so I was able to go to Miriam's talk. She's a wonderful speaker, very passionate, got a lot of humor there. And she sees me in the back of the room, and she says, no, don't you dare steal my stories. So Miriam, I'm stealing your story, because it's a great story. At one point during her talk, Miriam challenges the audience with the following challenge, and you can think about it for yourself. She said, what do you think is the most important Jewish book in the world? A book that no Jewish home should be without. And then she said, let me rephrase the question. If your teenager is leaving home and going off for college, and you're really concerned about their Jewish connection, the connection that they will have to their Jewish heritage, and you can only give him or her one book, what book will it be? And I want everyone in the room, she said, answer the question. And she went around the room. Now you could start imagining what some of the answers would be. A Siddur, a Jewish prayer book, a Chumash, a Jewish Bible, Herman Wouk's book, This Is My God, right? You can think of any book that you really were inspired and say, that's the book I would give. She goes around the whole room, takes everyone's answer, and she says, all good answers, but this is the book that I would give a teenager. And she picks up, it looked like a pamphlet. It was this like paper staple, and everyone's trying to figure out what she's holding up. And she says, this is a listing of the 4,000 Chabad centers that there are in the world. At first I said, that's the most important book, Siddur, Chumash, Tanya. And then she explained herself. She says, you know what this tells your teenager? It tells you that any place you go on earth, you have a home. You're never without a home. There's always a place nearby that you are welcome with open arms, and they will take you in. Think about it. In more than 3,700 years of Jewish history since the days of Abraham, we have never had a phenomenon like this. Never has there been a time in our history that you can say to a teenager, wherever you go in the world, know you have a home. This is the first time we can say this. And we can tell our children, and we can tell our grandchildren, and we can tell our parents and our brothers and our sisters, wherever you go in the world, know you have a home. Several years ago, there was this young man by the name of Dovi Mandelbaum. Dovi Mandelbaum was, we call it chassan. He was engaged to get married. The tradition in some circles was that the invitation for the wedding to the individual that inspired you the most, you don't send by mail, but you hand deliver. He was living in Jerusalem. His high school principal was someone that he felt really inspired him. His name was Rabbi Mishakovsky. And so he decided that instead of sending an invitation to his wedding to Rabbi Mishakovsky, he was going to hand deliver it. He hadn't seen Rabbi Mishakovsky in many years. In fact, the school that he went to was not a Chabad school, and now he had become a full-fledged Chabadnik. He was actually marrying a Lubavitcher girl, a Chabad girl. So he comes to Rabbi Mishakovsky's door, he knocks on the door, Rabbi Mishakovsky opens the door, and he says, do you remember me? He takes a look, he says, Dovi? Yeah. And he says, Rabbi Mishakovsky, I want you to know I'm getting married, and I came to bring you an invitation. I really want you to come to the wedding. Wow, you're so beautiful, so nice to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can see you. You became a Lubavitcher? I said, yeah. I got inspired by a group of Chabadniks. I went to yeshiva after I finished with your high school. Very nice. He opens the invitation. He takes a look, takes another look, and he says, and tell me, the girl you're marrying is also from a Chabad family? And Dovi says, yeah, she is. So he says, could you do me a favor? Ask her mother if she ever received $1 from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's a strange question, but okay, I'll ask. Next time he was by his future mother-in-law's house, he said, my Rosh Hashiva wanted to know, did you ever get $1 from the Lubavitcher Rebbe? She said, sure, yeah, on a few occasions, okay. He goes back to Mishkovsky's house and says, I have an answer for you. Yes, she did. He actually wrote down the dates that she had remembered when she went to New York, when she got the dollars. And he says, you know, I would like to tell you a story, but the story is so valuable that I'm going to charge you $1 million to tell it to you. Dovi says, I don't have $1 million. Okay, I'll make a deal, $10,000. I don't have $10,000. Okay, I'll settle for this. I'll come to your wedding, but I also want an invitation to one of the Sheva Brachos. And at that Sheva Brachos, I will tell the story. Dovi says, you got yourself a deal. And the wedding takes place. He gets married, a beautiful simcha, a beautiful wedding. And it comes to the Sheva Brachos. The Sheva Brachos that he's invited to is a Sheva Brachos in a big outdoor park, a big barbecue. And the microphone is given to Rabbi Mishikovsky. At this point, everyone heard that he has a story, $1 million story to tell. And so Dovi is there, his bride Tirza is there, the families are there. And Rabbi Mishikovsky gets up and tells this following story. He says, around 25 years ago, when I got married, my wife Chani and I had an understanding. The understanding was we wanted a particular type of lifestyle. She wanted a husband that was going to sit and learn all day. That's what she wanted. She would work, the husband would learn. She wanted to be married to a Torah scholar. I loved learning. So it was a good match. We had a deal. I would sit and learn. She would be happy. Great. We picked a kollel as a place of learning, and I went. It was wonderful. A great experience. First year of marriage went by, everything was great. The second year of marriage, I started noticing the kollel that we went to, this house of study, was right next to a high school, Jewish high school. In fact, it shared a building. And I would see the kids, and you were able to tell there were some troublemakers in that school that was always out of class. They were always playing basketball, never in class. They would go to class, they would get kicked out, they would play basketball. I just picked up on it that these kids were always outside. I became friends with these kids. At some point, the school administration decided enough is enough, and these kids are being expelled. You're not part of our school anymore. Now they're expelled. Who knows what type of mischief they're going to get into? I didn't like this. So I went to the principal and I argued for these kids. What do you mean expelling them? I understand they get kicked out, a little bit here, a little bit there. You can't expel Jewish children from a Jewish high school. And the principal said, who do you think you are to mix into our business? We had meetings about this, we made our decision, mix out. But it bothered me. So I told the kids, an hour a day, come here, and I'll learn with you outside. I'll spend an hour with you. And I did that. And they enjoyed it. And I realized I could connect with these kids. So it went from an hour a day to 2 hours a day. And then I realized these kids need love. They don't need to be expelled. They need to be welcomed. They need to be embraced. So I started asking around if anyone wants to give some charity so I could rent an apartment. And that apartment would become their makeshift yeshiva. And I would try to arrange programs for them. There would be a little dorm for them. And it was working. But instead of it taking 2 hours a day, it started taking 3 hours a day. And then I got involved in having to raise money every month to pay the rent and to have other teachers teach them as well. It's 4 hours. And it just kept on going and going and going. And at some point, my wife, Chani, says, this is not what we made up. Which one is it? Are you in the school business now for troubled kids? Are you becoming a Talmud Chacham? Are you becoming a Torah scholar like we made up? And she was right. We had a deal. And as much as I was doing good work, I was violating a deal I made with my wife. And she was hurting. And she wasn't happy about this. What do? I was lost. I didn't know what to do. Can't give up on these kids. It's my marriage. So I told Chani, we're going to take a day off. We're going to go out for a day. And we're going to talk it through. And whatever we decide together, that's what we're going to do. But let's just talk it all out. And we did. We went away. We drove to a place called Park Hayardei. And that's where we had this picnic lunch prepared. We sat down on the grass and we were going to talk. Where it was going to go, I don't know. The park had this lake, this water pond. The water pond had waterfalls that were coming from an upper section of the park. So there was this waterfall that would come into the water on the level of the park that we were at. I was facing the water, Chani was facing me. And as I'm beginning to talk to my wife, I see something in the corner of my eye. It was something red. I couldn't make it out clear. Was it a red backpack that just fell down the waterfall from the upper level to the lower level? An instinct just had me jump up, run into the water, and swim immediately towards the red bundle that was there. And when I got to the red bundle, my worst fears were met, because it was an infant child. I was afraid that I saw a child, but I couldn't believe that I would have witnessed a child coming down a waterfall. But here was this child in my hand, dressed in red. And she began to cough, which was the greatest sound I can hear because that meant she was alive. And I come out of the water holding this red bundle, walking to a stunned wife. And we realized that there must be a picnic going up on the top part of the park, and no one even realizes that an infant climbed into the water and fell down the waterfall into the lower part of the park. The whole thing happened in a blink of an eye. And I begin walking up to the top part of the park holding this very wet infant. And I see there's a whole big family party going on there. No one's panicking, which means no one knows there's a child, an infant missing. And as the mother of the child sees me there holding her baby in my hands, she shrieks and she realizes what had happened. And she comes running and she's crying and she's screaming and she's carrying on. How did this happen? How did this happen? How do I thank you? How do I reward you? I said, you don't have to thank me, you don't have to reward me. It's the greatest chus I can have to have been in the right place at the right time. And suddenly she yells to her other daughter, go to the car and bring my purse. So I said, please, don't. I don't want money. And she insists that this daughter runs and gets the purse. And from the purse, she takes out a single American dollar bill. Lest anyone thinks that she was trying to reward a man that saved his daughter's life with $1, she explained, this is the most precious thing I own. It's $1 that I received from the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself. And I said, look, I'm not a Lubavitcher chassid. To me, it's $1 bill. To you, it's so precious. Don't give it to me. You hold it. Why would you give away something that's so precious to you but has no meaning to me? And she said, you listen to me. You're taking this $1, and it will bring you blessings, it will bring you clarity in life. Hold on to it. And with that, she put it into my hand. At that point, as he's telling the story, Rabbi Mishakovsky takes out from his jacket $1 bill. And he shows it to everyone that was at this Shavuot Brachos. and he says, you may think that I was the one that saved this little girl, but that's not the full story. Because what brought me and my wife to the park that day was this last-ditch attempt to have an answer to our dilemma. What should I do with my life? And when that baby fell into the water and I had the merit of saving the baby, that was the answer. Devote your life to saving God's children. That's your answer. Torah study is great. Torah study is wonderful. But you have a skill to save kids. Save kids. Do that with the rest of your life. That was the answer. And I realized then, holding the Lubavitcher Rebbe's dollar, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe was speaking to me, not one of his Hasidim, but someone that has the ability to reach out and touch the life of another Jewish child. And Chani and I agreed from that day forward, this is what we're going to devote our life to. I left Kollel the next day. I opened my own yeshiva high school, and your Chassan Dovi was from my first students there. It was a school that learned part day, it taught them a trade, but it showed them love, it showed them acceptance. And as for today's bride, he says, I must say it was so nice seeing you the other night in that white, beautiful gown you wore at the wedding, instead of the red one you were wearing the first time we met. The bride was the girl in red that he had saved from the water, now marrying the first student of the school that he had. Does everyone in the party stood in stunned silence? The mother wiped away her tears and said, "And Kvod Harav, Honorable Rabbi, it's nice seeing you in dry clothes rather than soaking clothes. I saw you the last time we met." Let me conclude with this. Back in 1990, when communism finally fell apart and Hungary gained independence from the Soviet Union, people suddenly had freedoms the likes of which they hadn't had since 1956 when Russia invaded Hungary. For the first time in decades, people were able to make their own choices regarding the schooling of their children. And so like everyone all over the former Soviet Union, Jewish schools began opening up all over Hungary. One such school was in Budapest. A team of American teachers flew into Budapest and announced that they're going to be opening up a Jewish day school for the first time since 1956. They put ads in the newspaper saying anyone interested should come on this day for orientation. We'll talk about the school. They were hoping that they would have 30 interested students to open the school. That's what they were hoping for. To their shock, 250 families showed up for orientation. Obviously, they can't fit 250 kids. They don't know what to do. They're calling them, New York, we need some reinforcements here. What are we supposed to do? But in the meantime, they had to deal with 250 parents. So they broke them up into small groups to have little sessions with each group. And they asked this question, what brought so many people out? What's the interest? Some people spoke about their bubby. They remember their Jewish grandmother. Some people spoke about anti-Semitism in the public schools. Everyone had a different reason why they were there that day. But one man was quiet. He wasn't engaging in the conversation. And finally the rabbi there prodded him and said, "Why are you here?" He said, "It's hard for me to talk about it, but because you asked, I will answer. I was a young child of 7 years old when the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, occupied Hungary in 1944. The Nazis in 1944 knew that it was almost over for them, but in their sick obsession to kill as many Jews as possible, they rounded up as many of us as they could to send to Auschwitz. Hungarian Jewry was terrified. One night I'm lying in bed, I hear my parents arguing frantically. I came down to hear what was going on, but the door to the living room was closed and locked. In those days, the locks were these keyholes. So I bent down to peek through the keyhole to see what was going on in the living room and what the argument was about. My father was very agitated. My father said to my mother, "Look, we have nothing to worry about because no one knows we're Jewish. We don't look Jewish. We don't do anything Jewish. We never did anything Jewish. We have no Jewish friends. What evidence would there be of our Jewish identity? We're going to get away with it. To which my mother said, I hear that the Nazis come with lists. Somehow they have lists of all the Jewish families. If they have a list, maybe our name is on the list. To which my father says, our name could never be on the list because no one knows we're Jewish. And this argument continued back and forth. I'm 7 years old and I'm hearing this. And then my father says, listen to my mother. Let's suppose the Nazis come to this house in the next hour. They're going to knock on the door. We'll invite them in. And they're going to look through the whole house. There's nothing Jewish in the house. Stop panicking. Stop worrying. And with that, my mother begins to gaze at a bookcase. And she's staring at a high shelf on the bookcase. And my father stops speaking and he starts staring at that same shelf in the bookcase. My mother walks over to the bookcase and she takes down the book that they were staring at. That book was a siddur. It was a prayer book. It was a prayer book that her mother gave her on the day of her wedding, that her grandmother gave her mother on the day of her wedding, that her great-grandmother gave to her grandmother on the day of her wedding, passed on from one generation to the next. My mother started opening the pages, kissing every single page. And then she turned to my father, and my father nodded his head, saying yes. And with that, my mother took the prayer book and she tossed it into the fireplace. And she fell on the floor and she began crying and weeping. I was 7 years old. I ran to my bed. I put my head in the pillow and I cried that night like I'd never cried before. I had no Jewish friends. I knew nothing about Judaism. I never practiced Judaism, but I knew that something was ripped out of my soul that night. And ever since then, every night I have nightmares of seeing a prayer book on fire in my parents' fireplace. And so you ask me, why am I here? Why do I wish to send my child to the school? I'll tell you. On the first day of school, I'm going to proudly walk into this building holding my son's hand. I'm going to walk into this classroom with him, and I'm going to hand him a siddur. I will hand him a prayer book. And the tears from that night will finally stop flowing. My dear friends, we live in a period of time that we have the freedom, we have the resources, we have the manpower, we have the mandate of the Lubavitcher Rebbe to hand every Jewish child on the face of the earth a siddur. That we can connect every Jew on the face of the earth and inspire every Jew that's alive today. So let's go out there, every single one of us. Let's hand each and every single Jew, whether it's a siddur, whether it's a chumash, whether it's a mezuzah, a pair of tefillin, a Shabbos candle, a matzah, a Hanukkah menorah. Let's lighten and let's brighten the world. Let's prepare the world for the coming of Mashiach. Let's answer the passionate question, can we can? The question is, do we want to? As Isaiah told us, V'atem teluktu echad echad. Our job in this generation, in the final days before the Messiah, is to go out and touch and inspire each and every single Jew. The Rebbe constantly emphasized that at the end of the day, light dispels darkness. There is so much more good in the world than there is bad. There's so much more light than there is darkness. There's so much more truth than there are lies. There's more joy than there is sadness. So let's spread the Rebbe's message to each and every single Jew that we encounter. Because we can, and I know we want to. As the Lubavitcher Rebbe would constantly remind us, the Jewish people are a single person with many millions of faces. A single soul breathing within it a multitude of diverse bodies. In each one is found all of the Jewish people. And what any of us does immediately affects all the rest. If one of us fails, if one of us falls, we all stumble. When one does a mitzvah, we all participate. If one of us is suffering, all of us share the pain. When one rejoices, all of us dance and sing. None of us can say to the other, you go your way and I will go mine, because wherever you go, you take some of me with you. And wherever I go, you come along. We are indeed one people with one heart, one family. And if one member of the family is missing from the table, we all feel the void. So let's finish the mission, let's complete the task, and together we will merit the coming of Mashiach. May it indeed be now. Thank you very much.
Wow, Rabbi Brisky, thank you for sharing with us your words of inspiration and wisdom. In conclusion, dear friends, the Rebbe would always promote the words of the sages, Hamaisa hu ha'ikar. The actual deed is paramount. As such, we would like to suggest a positive resolution that we can all take on as we leave tonight's evening to make the world purer and brighter. This is to increase the fulfillment of the commandment, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love our fellow as much as ourselves, to not do to others what we wouldn't want done to ourselves. In the sometimes fragmented world we live in, each act of kindness that we perform makes a big difference, helping to heal the world and triggers an even more impactful, positive ripple effect. Before we conclude this uplifting evening with two more melodies, I'd like to thank once again Rabbi Brisky for delivering tonight's keynote address. Thank you, Judith, for inspiring our souls with your gift of music. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Wishing you all a good night, a safe trip home, and may we merit to always gather for happy occasions, with the ultimate gathering with the coming of Mashiach. And now, please enjoy these two nigunim from Judith.